You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC, a show that is fueled by Celsius energy drinks. Not because they sponsor us, they should, but because we consume so much caffeine during the day. Producer Nick, grab me my Celsius, please, my good sir, because this news deserves a drink. I am happy to break that Jimmy Kimmel has been pulled indefinitely, according to a report from Dominic Pattern at Deadline. Yes, I think that's very appropriate. Jimmy Kimmel, thoughts are not with you. And why has Jimmy Kimmel been pulled indefinitely? Why has the guy who has lectured us for years about how we're awful and terrible and how we just aren't as great and entertaining as his Hollywood elites, why has Jimmy Kimmel had the plug pulled out from under him, to mix metaphors? Well, it's because he got up in front of the nation and just a day and a half ago said this.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
How a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish. So, again, props to, just being very transparent here, to Benny Johnson. He brought on FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. I will say, I really wish I would have thought of that first. That would have been smart. We had other news to cover. So this Benny Johnson over with Brendan Carr on if there may be any FCC violations here for saying something that is, first of all, incorrect. There was no evidence whatsoever, as you all know, that suggests this guy was a MAGA supporter who assassinated Charlie Kirk. Quite the opposite. Here's Brendan Carr and Benny Johnson.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are, avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had a tweet out last week where he was saying that, emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. What we say, what we think, the narrative around events. And we're seeing a lot of consequences that are flowing from President Trump doing that. I mean, look, NPR has been defunded.
He then lists a couple of the instances that the Trump administration has presided over, again, like NPR being defunded, organizations that are using taxpayer dollars against the American people dishonestly, and then organizations on network and FCC TV that are either participating in active gross defamation, which again is not legal, or are participating in the, participating in actions on FCC spectrum that are considered election interference, like providing undue aid to one candidate over the other. So President Trump did post about this already. This is as of 7:06 p.m. He said, quote, I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings. I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next. Has even less talent than Colbert. Greg Gutfeld is better than all of them combined, including the moron on NBC who ruined the once great Tonight Show. And he's correct. First of all, Greg Gutfeld is killing it. Absolutely killing it. And not just because he follows me on the Ministry of Truth over on X, but because he is a phenomenal comedian in a comedian-centric show. Stephen Colbert getting up in front of the nation and doing the vaccine dance while a band plays tequila incorrectly, and having Jimmy Kimmel get up and lecture Americans about their insensitivity to issues after making tons of money doing blackface. Gee, I just don't quite know if I feel bad for Jimmy Kimmel at all. Producer Nick?
May I just commend Trump for a second in that moment? What an appropriate response. People have still been shaken up over the response itself. Trump switching the subject to a more appropriate subject in that moment, that was not a moment to discuss his feelings. That was not something in the setting. The question was improper. What he did was very appropriate, very stoic, very commendable.
And by the way, I think that this is important to note that in other moments of severe tragedy, when a president has been brought a piece of news that is personally egregious to him, the president has moved away from it and then came back to it when it was time for a statement, whether it was time for a video to address the nation. And that's not unusual. But anyway, here's from Nexstar Media Group. Nexstar says their ABC affiliates will preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live. From Irving, Texas, September the 17th, quote, Nexstar Media Group Incorporated, that's on the NASDAQ, by the way, today announced that the company's owned and partner television stations affiliated with the ABC television network would preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live for the foreseeable future, beginning with tonight's show. Nexstar strongly objects to the recent comments made by Mr. Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk and will replace the show with other programming in its ABC-affiliated markets. Mr. Kimmel's comments about the death of Mr. Kirk are offensive and insensitive at a critical time in our national political discourse, and we do not believe they reflect the spectrum of opinions, views, or values of the local communities in which we are located, said Andrew Alford, president of Nexstar's broadcasting division. He then says, continuing to give Mr. Kimmel a broadcast platform in the communities we serve is simply not in the public interest at the current time, and we've made the difficult decision to preempt his show in effort to let cooler heads prevail as we move toward the resumption of respectful, constructive dialogue. There has been an attitude on the left in mainstream media for the last decade, for the last 2 decades. They can say whatever they want. They can call you evil, bigoted, fascist Nazis. They can dance on your grave. They can make fun of an individual's widow after he is murdered and assassinated. They can make fun of his friends. They can, again, call overtly innocent individuals, not just political figures, although that would be bad enough, to mock and scorn to the point of saying that any of those who want justice for the actions are idiots for not believing something blatantly false, photoshopped, and egregious. I have no sympathy at all. I hope he also enjoys the unemployment line until they give him an Emmy at next year's awards. Now, there is other stuff to discuss on the official side of the aisle, which is that Democrats on the Hill, while the media is crying over themselves, Democrats on the Hill are taking the bold approach of where they stood for illegal immigration against the American public. They are also now standing for crime, violent, rampant crime against the American people. This is insane. And it's not just insane because common sense, you don't like crime, duh. It's insane because at this time in our nation's history, in which there are more documented cases of far left violent acts of terrorism than at any time in recent history. And by the way, to those who push up statistics and say, well, actually 93% of all terror acts are committed by right-wing individuals. All of those studies, all of them, every single one that has been cited, will mark events like the shooting at the Ascension Church in Minneapolis as not an incident of terror or left-wing violence. So anything in which it's suspected there was someone on the right involved gets counted as terrorism. Anyone in which someone suspected the left wing getting involved, that's just commonplace violence. When you actually equate the direct evidence, leftist acts of terrorist violence in the last decade grossly outnumber those on the right. And it matters because those in the media and in the halls of Congress are currently advocating for more of the rhetoric, which led to the murder of students in Nashville and Minneapolis, which led to the setting on fire of protesters in Colorado, which led to the burning down of Governor Josh Shapiro's residence in Pennsylvania, and continues to burn down cities whenever the left feels like it. We're going to cover that in a second. Sorry, radio crew, we got to send you over to the commercial because I don't want Brendan Carr and the FCC finding me. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. FCC rules don't say boo about me continuing on the live stream, though. So let's dig into this. Right now, the Democrats are throwing a fit, and Thomas Massie from Kentucky, over youth crime reform. First of all, thanks to B.A. Alley for 5 Daily Signal memberships. That was really nice if you didn't have to do that, but we do appreciate it. So the Trump administration is currently pushing forward a House legislation bill that would allow children as young as 14 to be tried as adults, and would also reverse a prior law that extended access to the juvenile and family court system through age 24. That's the big part of the bill. You had minors, age 17, and then you had adults, full legal adults, between the ages of 18 and 24, who were committing violent murders, carjackings, grand theft auto, arson, high-scale hate crime vandalism, and a number of other horrific acts, who were being charged in juvenile court. There is an individual right now who committed a violent murder in Washington, D.C., who was tried in juvenile court as an 18-year-old, or a 17-year-old, excuse me, and is set to be released from juvenile detention when they turn 21. Violent murder, you get 4 years in prison, maybe 4 years in juvenile detention. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. There's no reason that should continually be a part of American policy. And I do want to point that out here with the comments made by Representative Robert Garcia of California, Democrat. The Democrat Oversight account pushed this out to everyone. They were so proud of it. Here is his case as to why we're not going to charge criminals with, crimes.
I want to remind our Republican colleagues that crime in D.C. over the last few years has actually been going down. And quite frankly, the idea that we're now going to put middle schoolers in prison, this should be called the Middle Schoolers for Prison Act.
By the way, if you are a 14-year-old in middle school, you're one of the only middle schoolers in your class. Because again, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, most of the 14-year-olds that were in my stuff were freshmen in high school or very close to being in it. This isn't middle schoolers like 6th and 7th graders. Get out of here.
A 24-year-old middle schooler? Is that what we're suggesting here? How many times can you retry?
Only in the Baltimore school system, Nicholas.
Grade
is
reading level,
inhumane
though.
and shameful. We can all agree that crime should be taken on, that D.C. and other cities we want to make safer.
No, we can't. I can. Most Americans can. Former Democrats of the 90s and the aughts can, who are now independent or leaning Republican. Democrats can't. They refuse. You have people like Representative Jasmine Crockett saying whenever she sees police departments, she sees slave patrols. You have Ta-Nehisi Coates writing very flowery fan fiction Hunger Games style text, calling the police the upholder of white supremacy. Clearly, you don't want to take on crime.
But this idea that we're going to penalize children in middle school at the age of 14 and put them in prison is irresponsible and, quite frankly, it's un-American.
No, I'm sorry. If you are a 14-year-old who, through premeditated murder, in cold blood, commit a violent crime such as murder or sexual assault, you should be tried as an adult. If you are a 14-year-old who commits an act of mass violence, you should be tried as an adult. And if you are a 17-year-old who steals a vehicle and that results in the death of a person because of your malicious, horrible driving, then you should be charged as an adult and not given a free pass in juvenile detention so you're out at 21. This clinging to this kind of policy is only going to get worse. And that brings us over to the biggest group that the Democrats and the legacy media are covering for, including Jimmy Kimmel, who we just talked about. We're going to bring the radio crew to talk about it. It's time to discuss these growing terror networks. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Be right back.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So we'll get to talking about Kash Patel in the House today and his boxing match in a second, because right now we are in a situation in which Democrat officials in Congress are not only covering for petty crime, not individualized violent crime, but Democrat officials in Congress and then legacy media officials, journalists, and like you just heard, Jimmy Kimmel, who has now been pulled indefinitely, according to a statement from Nexstar and other reporting. They're covering so desperately for the shooter, Tyler Robinson. We played on the show yesterday, the weird ABC reporter who felt the need to say twice on the air how romantic and wonderful and sweet and the duality of goodness and warm hugs it was to read the assassin of Charlie Kirk saying that he killed Charlie Kirk to protect his love, my love, I want to make sure I get this right, the furry, gay assassin's boyfriend, the transgender transitioning male to a fake female person. So you have Kimmel, who's just refusing to acknowledge that it was a left-wing assassin. You have people like the vast majority of the legacy media who has been trying to either cover for the transgender roommate who may be an accessory to murder now based on the timeline of the text messages. You have other Antifa cells now around the country. Of course, media is not going to pay attention to this, which are posting after action reports on the Charlie Kirk assassination. I want to make that clear. To those out there in the left-wing side of the aisle who have said Antifa is just some kind of a philosophy or idea, they are lying to you. There are Antifa chapters around the country currently that are putting up after action reports. So Corvallis, Oregon's Antifa group. This is according to Andy No reporting it and actually getting the website archived before it was taken down. Antifa put out an after action report on the assassination of Charlie Kirk, comparing it to other attempted assassinations and terrorist activities they participated in. For example, like the riots at Sean Foyt events. Sean Foyt, he's a musician. He does a lot of Christian events, evangelism events. And there are videos that we're not going to show because we would get taken down due to the violent nature of these videos, of Antifa showing up to these events and beating women and children at these events. Antifa, young college-age unemployeds in black hoodies carrying fake trash can shields. We've talked about these fools with Julio Rosas before. Putting out these after-action reports. And by the way, they're continuing to point out that the best way to move forward is to encourage more various political action events and spurring conspiracy theories about basically that Antifa might start adding little hints when they commit violent crimes to suggest that the Jews did it or Israel did it. Like wearing a star or having the individual drop a Star of David on the ground after some kind of an event so that they can deflect and say that, oh, the Jews in Israel did it. So the media will run with that story instead of, because they've already found out. Oh, there's no way they're going to suggest that it was anyone on the left that did so. One of the latest case in points on this was Montel Williams on Abby Phillips' show yesterday saying that, well, people right now, they're trying to pigeonhole this as a political issue.
There are people who are trying to pigeonhole this as a leftist thing and a right thing. And what we're really talking about, hear me because I'm going to throw you when I say this.
Oh, I bet it's not going to throw me.
We're talking about a love-torn child.
Oh man, the reason he committed crime, he had a rough home life. I had a rough home life for a time. I didn't go out and murder anyone. I had a lot of students when I was teaching. They had rough home lives. You know what they didn't do? A lot of violent crime. Montel.
A kid. This is probably his first real relationship.
Oh, he was his first true love. The gay furry fell in love with a transgender. Oh, look at the texts. How could they be pigeonholing? Oh, it's just so sweet and wonderful and loving. Then you have Barack Obama coming out in front of the public, and now he's mad. You riled Barack Obama, and he doesn't believe you should be out here targeting political opponents like me. I've never done that. Here's Barack Obama saying that while Republicans are going after individuals for violent ideology that they openly call for, Obama never did anything like that. Never.
When I was president, in the aftermath of tragedies, when Dylan Roof went into a black church and, based on his own words, shot a group of folks who were engaged in Bible study and who had invited him in. And according to him, it was for racist reasons. As President of the United States, my response was not, who may have influenced this troubled young man to engage in that kind of violence, and now let me go after my political opponents. And
so I'm sorry. As far as we are aware, and we're pretty aware of these kinds of things. Survey just says no. That's not true at all. The lie detector test determined that was a lie. Allow me to explain how. In 2016, news article, not from a right-wing source, Obama scolds Republicans for quibbling over semantics in terrorism address. In a forceful address, Obama is warning, once again, the government faces a steep uphill climb to detect lone wolf terrorist attacks. It comes days after an attack on the Orlando nightclub. The worst terrorist attack in the United States since September 11th. The Atlantic, 2015. This was after the community college in Oregon was shot up. President Obama on Oregon shooting. This is a political choice that we make. The president did not hold back his criticism of gun laws in addressing this most recent tragedy. Tim Walz is launching his re-election for governor right now by doing this exact thing. Tim Walz, right now, at this very moment in time, is trying to run on gun violence off of political tragedies. Here you go.
Look, I've spent the last 2 weeks sitting in the living rooms of parents who sent their children to the first couple days of school and then buried them later when 116 bullets were fired in less than 2 minutes by an assault weapon, as they said in church. And this happens all across the country. And there's always a reason. The Republicans are, concerned about mental health, even though they voted against it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. He goes on to say that the problem is we need to ban guns. We need to ban guns. Ban them. Ban guns right now. Go door to door. Great. Tim Walz, ladies and gentlemen. And again, there's a large group of individuals that are celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There are individuals that are getting fired for it. We'll talk about that a little bit later because we're going to get into Kash Patel and then Nepal. Because what we're seeing right now through these Antifa networks, these transgender activist and Antifa networks, are popping up on Discord servers. They start a private Discord server. They coordinate with each other. And then in the case of right now, what we know from the Tyler Robinson assassination, he told his transgender roommate, boyfriend, that he'd been planning the attack for a week. And according to Discord messages, the FBI is still investigating. You haven't seen the Discord messages yet because the FBI is still investigating more than 20 individuals, according to the words of FBI Director Patel. We're seeing a situation in which basically it takes about a week or two now to coordinate with radical members of Antifa groups funded by NGOs to commit violent acts of terror up to and including overthrowing a government. Radio crew, we got to send you over to commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, while the radio crew is over on commercial, I got to show you a few of these Kash Patel fistfight moments from today. because it includes some of the great ones. Again, right now, televised, streamed committee hearings in the House or the Senate. It's all just for the cameras. We've said that. I'm not the only guy who has made that very, very clear. Everyone from Greg Gutfeld to Megyn Kelly to Ben Shapiro, they've made it quite clear that these televised hearings, which I benefit from because I get to share them with you, it doesn't really do that much for the American people, other than recognizing you should never elect someone like Mazie Hirono ever. Pramila Jayapal, Washington 7th, of course, one of the squad members. Here she is just yelling, just a howling and a yodeling. She's mad. Kash Patel exists. Here you go.
Or not. You can't even say. Victims credibly came forward. And you know what happened? President Trump authorized the indictments of Jeffrey Epstein. Not Biden, not Obama.
President Trump
no one else.
called the entire thing a Democratic hoax. So I would like to ask
the gentlelady's time has expired. I gave her the additional 45 seconds she requested. The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for his 5 minutes.
If you would meet with the women who were sexually abused and raped and groomed at the ages of 14.
By the way, it's really nice for Pramila Jayapal to care about grooming young women finally. I seem to remember when there were concerns about that in certain Michigan communities and London communities, that she said that was very Islamophobic. So good on her for, finally giving a rip about teen women. There is there's so much to dig into, and it's a real shame we don't have enough time to touch all of it. I do want to point out that Representative Jasmine Crockett, the ultimate gaslighter, soon to lose her seat in Dallas, she decided to take this time again, days after the political assassination of Charlie Kirk, to claim that actually, the only person who gets to say that they're not safe right now is black women.
Director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, we're happy because now we feel safe, I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacist, because I specifically, as a black woman, definitely don't feel safe.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We're clearly... the assassinations and terrorist attacks and shootings, those aren't, really, it's like the Michelle Obama. No one ever lets black women complain about their pain. I do want to point out, because I would be remiss as a broadcaster if I didn't point out that Jasmine Crockett looks exactly like in Edna Mode from The Incredibles. I mean, it's a dead match. The glasses, and I'm sorry, I'm going to take a quick sidebar here. I know we don't necessarily have the time in the show, but I think it's useful. If you have glasses that are more plastic than lens, you need a different pair of glasses. This trend where everyone tries to look like the eclectic art designer from 1968, who probably talks like this kind of accent. You know what I'm talking about. If your glasses are in weird Harry Potter spell shapes, homie, you're just, stop, get different glasses. I mean, at least they better have a camera in them, or like a toothbrush or breath mints or something as kind of a feature. They're just freaking ugly. Stop it. I'm no glasses aficionado, but I mean, come on now. Then, of course, there's so much to dig into on this. Eric Swalwell, he got into a big argument. Representative Hank Johnson, the legendary music singer himself, straight from the halls of Congress, he started lecturing Kash about pedophiles.
Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding pedophiles? Why are you protecting pedophiles?
That is maybe the most offensive thing you could say to me, given the numbers.
Well, you have not released the Epstein
numbers
files
of pedophiles.
You are aware of the Epstein client list.
And given that the FBI's arrested a lot of pedophiles, kind of a little awkward question from Hank. We got to bring the radio crew back before producer Allison throws a hatchet at me. So don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, before we talk about Nepal, very quickly here, I do wish to share a few of the Roundhouse FBI Kash Patel clips, because what's going on right now with the FBI, there are serious cases, I would argue, that the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation needs to attend to. We've got a couple of investigations right now that Americans want some answers on. And every time we need a full day's worth of House hearings and a day's worth of Senate hearings, that's not accountability. It's just not. Pretending that getting a bunch of representatives together just so that they can yell and keep individuals in the administration from their work, it's a waste of taxpayer money, sure, although I don't really care for that argument about representatives being in the House costing money. But the real issue is that it's just a campaign advertisement. Representative Troy Nehls, Republican from Texas, 22nd, he made this case pretty well.
It is quite clear that certain members of this committee, they want their 15 seconds on TV, stamping and coming. Maybe it's for fundraising. Maybe they're struggling in their district. They need a little bump. But they turn a committee into a clown show, and that's what we're seeing. You're being unjustly attacked today. I watched the Senate hearings yesterday. You were attacked there. We know there's an agenda. There's always an agenda.
He's correct. I mean, again, it's all a campaign slogan. And you saw this throughout the entire hearing. You had Eric Swalwell, again, famous for Fang Fang, the Chinese spy that he got cucked by. Eric Swalwell, he hopped into the ring with Patel. It didn't go very well.
Did you ever tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
The Attorney General and I have had numerous discussions about the entirety of the Epstein files and the reviews conducted by our team.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
And we have released where President Trump's name is in the Attorney's file.
It's a simple question. Did you tell the Attorney General that the President's name is in the Epstein files?
During many conversations that the Attorney General and I...
So for those who are saying, he's obfuscating here, he's saying yes, but with context. He's saying, yeah, we've already cited where Trump's name is and is not in the files. I've had a ton of conversations with Bondi. None of them was, oh my gosh, subject of discussion, reply, forward, you won't believe, click here, Trump is in the Epstein files. But Swalwell doesn't like complex answers, or he just wants the yes or no soundbite for a campaign ad.
I have had on the matter of Epstein, we have reviewed.
The question is simple. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out?
Yes or no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No, A, B, C,
Director,
D, E, F.
it sounds like you don't want to tell us. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files?
Why don't you try serving your constituency by focusing on reducing violent crime in this country and the number of pedophiles that are illegally harbored in your sanctuary cities in California?
Now that's true. As we have seen from the arrest of violent and sexually abusive illegal immigrants who were in jails or are given special sanctuary status in sanctuary cities, that they will not allow ICE to come in and pick up. We end up scooping up people who just so happen to have committed lots of violent sexual offenses towards minors. Gee, interesting how that works out. Interesting indeed. Now, this does bring us over to the situation in Nepal. So right now, we're seeing the end results of the kind of hyper social mediaization of terror groups that get together and decide via the echo chamber of these little social media server messaging groups. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with Discord. Our show has a Discord. You can join it also in a link down in the description. But this weird situation that we appear to be in society now, where angry individuals can go to a private, secluded social media server, and based on some promptings, the FBI did this with the kidnapping plot for Governor Whitmer. As you may remember, they prompted people through private messaging groups, hey, you're angry, why don't you kidnap Governor Whitmer? That's why the people in that assassination or kidnapping plot were let off the hook. Entrapment. The government fed them the idea. Now we see this on a private level with NGOs. So that brings us to the entire situation surrounding the violent overthrow in 2 weeks of the Nepalese government. To get a closer look, at least some kind of an understanding at the situation that is rapidly developing in Nepal, we go over to Quinn Weimer, national security and foreign policy analyst. This is something that I know you've been following pretty closely, Quinn. This situation is developing almost more quickly than we can get this information out. Give us a 30,000-foot overview here.
Yeah, so politically, Nepal has a really long history of unrest and just general government shifts. beginning in the 1990s. It really escalated from there, and corruption has just been bred into the system at this point. When it comes to Gen Z, there was early complaints, and I think it's just really early September, and like right at the start of that 15 kind of day time clock into what we've seen today. There's posts online about Nepo babies of these Nepalese politicians, which only served to really aggravate the youth who are at a 20.8% unemployment rate, and just generally see a lot of economic downturn in their generation.
So this economic downturn, what is, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut in here, I apologize. The question that I asked, just to frame for some of our viewers who don't follow Nepal as closely as, again, all of your studies on the Southeast Asian dynamics here, the government in power before Generation Z kids and teenagers and young adults overthrew it. What was the form of government before? I know you were talking about kind of the Nepo baby situation, but what was overthrown specifically? Was it communist, fascist, kind of an oligarchical system? What were we looking at?
So Nepal has a really interesting history. They started as a monarchy, and in 2005, the king he did a little coup d'etat and essentially seized power from the Congress and the parliament that Nepal had placed in there. But then about a year later, he was deposed as well. So it's been a back and forth between a monarchy and some semblance of democracy. And I think that's what they had in mind right before this happened. However, incidents of corruption, it really overshadowed any type of democratic system that they really sought to create.
In a minor Asian nation, corruption? Quinn, I'm shocked.
Shocking.
I'm aghast. I can't believe it.
And we've seen a lot of this stuff coming out of the Philippines as well. And so I think this is just kind of boiled over to a point where in a small country where this protest just kind of kicked up. And from what I learned, it wasn't a centralized protest. There was no long-term plan to go burn down Parliament. And it just kind of sparked literally just in a second after protesters. Actually, I should probably backtrack. There was a social media ban. Naturally, with Gen Z, that was a major spark to the trouble that we've seen today. They went to the capital city of Kathmandu and they protested. However, the clash with police, it ended up with over 20 dead from police clashes. So that really angered those on the streets, and they saw the Capitol and they saw some Molotov cocktails and they got to work. The footage that we've seen has been really incredible because it just kind of highlights how social media and Gen Z are now a part of history and documenting it. And it's just so raw. There's no editing. It's just people with phones on the back of mopeds and they're just filming as they go along. So it's been really interesting to see this type of unprecedented political movement.
And I do want to I want to kind of get at a little political analysis here, kind of in a comparison to bring some analogy here. This is not unusual. I know you and I have talked about this before from our, let's call them redacted backgrounds, that when you're looking at Bangladesh, when you're looking at Burma, especially NPA a couple of years ago, when you look at the entire area of this region, people don't realize you get into the area of the world where country borders become more blurred lines. You see essentially, I know that India juts up in between Nepal and Bhutan and Bangladesh and all the way over to touching Burma. There's such it's a crowded part of the world, but it is a very hectic and at times almost an anarchoist warlord system that sweeps in every couple of years. This is what I wanted to pose to you because I know that this is also an area of your expertise. Remember a couple of years ago, there was that we're going to raid Area 51 social media group?
Oh, yes. I'm very, very aware of that group.
So one of the things that scared the FBI is that it actually appeared there were going to be individuals who had originally signed up to run as fast as they could into Area 51 as a joke, that eventually they started investigating and then did a little overreacting. The kind of spur of the moment populism that even in the days of raiding the Bastille took a couple of weeks to arrange. The Boston Tea Party even took at least 3 days of planning from what we know of records at the time. And even then, after they started to kind of fall out of place and into a bit more chaotic of a mob at the very end of the Tea Party, you still see things that were being laid back in earlier plans and contingencies now in today's day and age, with Starlink providing internet access anywhere around the face of the earth with systems already in place. You can essentially foment some type of violent reaction to something, as you said, within hours.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And I'm calling it the wet dream of many, many Gen Z. We have grown up on dystopian war revolution novels, and people are ready.
That's a take.
Well, people are just ready now.
No, please keep going. No. I'm sorry. I've never heard it articulated that way, but it's a really good way to frame it. I'm sorry. Please continue.
So with this in mind, I mean, the hive mind that is like TikTok, right? One idea, it just spreads so quickly that it doesn't need days of planning anymore. We just need a bit of anger and a whole lot of audacity from youths who have not touched grass in a long time. So I feel like we're going to see more of this. I think it will be on a lesser scale than Nepal, but we see it with protests that escalate in the United States too. The ICE protests, a lot of those were arranged on social media, and they were arranged fairly quickly as well after any executive order has been issued. So I do feel like we are going to see this type of mobilization in the future, especially now that it takes a fraction of a second to come up with an idea, to organize, and then to execute it.
Well put. Quinn Weimer, will bring you back as is necessary. And I mean this in all kindness, hopefully not as necessary given the turn of the world. Maybe we can bring you back for a bit of better news. Foreign policy and national security analyst, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Everyone wants to say they're investing in Generation Z and the youths and talk about building up a new generation. And yet you get out to any kind of middle of the country zone and find out that does kind of get to being just a bit of talk. So when we want it to be a little more than talk and talk about how some of the effects from horrible events over the last couple of weeks are actually galvanizing groups to train a new generation of strong Americans who are working towards genuine results, we go over to Nick Solheim at American Moment. Always great to have you. The work that you guys are doing is stellar, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you for having me. It's always a great time coming on this show.
So let's dive into kind of the meat already. The last couple of days have been terrible. I know that also as a Minneapolis native, it's not exactly as though you had time to deal with the prior terror attack regarding the Catholic Ascension School. It's beyond infuriating to see the effects on individuals throughout this country who are in a state of grief. But there are really encouraging notes coming from the ashes of these events and a kind of galvanizing of the youth in getting involved in a way they haven't before. Not in the PBS Kids get involved way, but real tangible stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, here at American Moment, we have seen a massive uptick in applications for our Fellowship for American Statecraft, which is basically this program where we pay people to come and do their first internship in DC, either in the administration or on Capitol Hill, and then train them all day on Fridays and assist them in finding a full-time role before the end of the fellowship program. And what I'm seeing in a lot of these applications, and I've always been very adamant about the fact that they go to other people too, but they all come directly to my email because I'm always reminded of, this is why we do it. And what I'm seeing in those applications is that we have a question in there that asks, how'd you hear about the fellowship or what motivated you to apply? And I've seen a huge uptick in for Charlie.
people don't realize, I think, although they're starting to realize more, that when you do reach out to communicate with someone in the administration, when you have a question to a congressman's office, you often get a staffer. You get someone who's in one of the positions on the lower end of the ladder who then takes your question and maybe answers it directly or then chooses how to pass that up the chain. And so who staffs organizations in Washington is crucial, because up until a couple of years ago, and I know we talked about this when I actually came in for an interview with y'all, there were very few organizations that were staffing anyone except for the far left kind of theater kids out of universities. And now, again, seeing people realize there is a marathon that must take place, not a quick sprint, not one more election, not a race to the midterms, but you have to get in on the ground floor so that you can totally retrofit the entire system to benefit the American people instead of some lobbyist at some pharmaceutical firm. That's a different kind of momentum. I don't think we've seen it in American history for at least half a century.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And the thing that people who have been around a little longer are usually most freaked out by learning the reality of the way that staffing works in DC.
Right.
Is it's not just the correspondence office that skews really young. It's also policymaking. I mean, I think it's good to be very realistic about the fact that the government, in terms of its staffing perspective, is by and large run by people under the age of 30. And considering the views,
sorry, just to say, can you say that last clause again, just so that sinks in with our audience? Just one more time, please.
The government, by and large, is run by people under the age of 30.
All right, please continue. Yeah. Did you hear that chill up your spine? Yeah, me too.
Look, let me tell you why that's a good thing. And by the way, actually, I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today. I was over at the Eisenhower Executive Office building, which for those of you who don't know, it's where when a lot of people say they work in the White House, that is where they actually work. It's this building that is adjacent to the West Wing. And I was over there earlier today, and I was talking with one of my friends who's in a pretty senior role at one of the offices within the executive office of the president, and he said something to me, and the effect was this. He said, "Isn't it so nice that our government is run by our friends?" And I think that's such an important thing to hit on, like thinking about the youth movement in this country, which, by the way, in many ways we owe to Charlie, and to Turning Point more broadly, and everybody who works there, both in leadership and people all the way down that are out, knocking on doors all weekend and after class at night. And I think that this is actually a good thing, because we have tens of millions of young voters in this country who want a break from the failed politics of the past. They want a break from failed Democratic politics. They want a break from failed Republican politics like George W. Bush. And so we finally, for the first time in my lifetime, have a class of staff in Washington that more accurately reflect the worldview of the American people, and specifically the people who voted for President Trump. And so I will never be ashamed about saying that that's a good thing.
No, I don't think you should. And I've been getting a little bit close to this point on the show over the last couple of days, but I'm glad that it's with you that this actually pops into my mind to discuss here. After the 2024 election, Jen Psaki and Jon Stewart, they went on kind of a little show together, and they talked about why it all fell apart. And you know as well as I do what the Democrats always blame it on. It's on messaging. And Jen Psaki accidentally bumped into a little bit of the truth. She said, so the left strength is all echoing the same message, but its weakness is they all hate each other. Like inside, they all hate each other. Whereas the right, we may not have the same messaging. And I would guess that if, you sat you, me, individuals from other various organizations around DC in the country, we might have some differences on some different things. But on the core stuff, which we agree upon, we advocate for each other and we share each other's messages. I know there's a lot of shows that you go on, and you should, and they're friends and colleagues of mine whom the left, they would say, these are our competitors. But I mean, if you go on a Benny Johnson show, if you go on a, Buck and Sexton show kind of a thing, you go on some of the other major shows around the country, that's an excellent thing. And some of those competitors, quote unquote, end up being guests on my show and vice versa. And that's a great thing that we've built, that right now you have Generation Z on the right, which are kind of aligning with some of the boomer stander barriers on the right in this kind of new populism. And then you also have this entire wing of the party that is galvanized around moving towards American principles instead of, like you said, either the Democrat failed policies of the 20th and 21st centuries, and then the George Bushian, I'm going to put an AI center right next to your farm and destroy the water table kind of republicanism. There's a genuine feeling of optimism that I think that, again, I'm glad that Charlie Kirk was my friend, so that when I honor his legacy, I don't have to make anything up. I don't have to pretend anything extra about him. He did genuine work that is now paying far more dividends than many men's entire legacies pay. And it's been exactly a week since his passing, or since his assassination.
Yeah. So yeah, let me give a little bit of wisdom here that I'm fresh off of. We do this fellowship retreat when we have our new class of fellows in town, and our fall class just started last week. So we did our retreat, and I do this talk about some of the rules of the road in DC, particularly for our cohort and for people that are involved in our movement. And you got to remember, a lot of these young guys and gals haven't, maybe they visited DC on a school trip, but they've never worked here before. They don't understand how it works.
You mean that eighth grade school trip didn't prepare them for the way DC really functions? I'm shocked.
Yeah, that's right. And so, a lot of them come to DC, and and sort of their central thesis for like how they get a job is, I just have to hand out as many business cards and shake as many hands as possible, and surely something will fall out of the sky. And I sort of have this bit that I like to pull out with them, which is networking is not real. It's called having friends.
Yep. It's so true. I'm sorry. I by the way, I have this little line that I say as well, kind of in the same vein. When I invite someone, Sunday I spoke at an event, and someone came up and ended up giving me their card, and I gave them my number, and I said, let's do lunch. And I don't mean the Hollywood style, let's do lunch. You call me, we'll meet at McAllister's. You call me, we'll meet at Chick-fil-A. You call me, we will meet here and do this on X day. Because, again, these kind of friendships are, again, important. Otherwise, again, why would I? Again, we're friends offline. Again, your wife friends with a lot of wonderful people in the movement who I see the impact of real, genuine friendship and marching alongside one another, so that when there are really rough moments, when you do need prayer, when you do need a bit of attention focused on something, I don't have to start whipping out business cards and cold calling people and saying, okay, what congressman's office person, or are they in the same office? There's likely a DM group or some kind of a show or think tank or policy crew that I can get a hold of and get that rolling. That's worth its weight in gold. Beyond that, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, and there's also the advice portion of this too. Like, anybody who's really close to me knows, sometimes I will text them at 2 a.m. and say, hey, I have this really good idea. I think it's the best thing I've ever come up with. And they'll text you back, at a reasonable hour at like 7 or 8 in the morning. And they'll be like, I think that's the dumbest thing that you've ever come up with in your life. Like, please don't do that. And I think
we have producer Lou. He has the gaydar. So anytime we have an idea that's just really, really gay, he tells us, like, that's terrible. Don't do that.
But that is the mark of a true friend, right? Somebody who's, yes, willing to make those sorts of connections and give you ideas and that sort of thing without sort of checking the political capital balance, right? But also to tell you that you're being stupid. Like that is a very valuable thing. And one of the recurring things, just coming back to having this conversation about Charlie and his legacy, one one of the things that I've ended up saying a lot over the last couple of days, which I cannot claim credit for, it was something that my pastor said to me, immediately after the assassination. But there are going to be some people whose thought process goes, we can only respond to violence with violence, and we can respond to violence with a certain set of action, that either hurts people or like destroys their livelihood. Now, to be clear, I'm totally, people who celebrate this assassination deserve to be thrown out of their jobs, but we're talking about recriminations against anybody who votes for the other party at all. And I would say, first of all, I think that's un-American. But when you start to get into some of these, conversations about how much we can hurt other people as retribution, the thing that I would encourage everyone listening to this is that, by getting into that mindset or saying those things out loud, you are just telling on yourself for not believing in prayer. And I know by the way, it is a total leftist coded mindset thing to say, to be like, oh yeah, but I want to do something real. No, prayer is real. It is actually probably one of the realest weapons we have. It's a sword. It's a shield all in one. So I know that doesn't really have, that much relation to what we were just discussing.
Well,
but
I hate to break this to you, but with my audience, that's extremely relatable, and that's something that we've discussed a lot. And I think that, to your point, to sum it up more so, producer Nick said it this way: "Don't become who they say you are," is something that I think is effective. But I'll say this, and this is actually over on this blue couch that has never been on camera, and God willing, never will be. Just a couple of weeks ago, this young man named Kyle, who's one of the chapter heads just for TPUSA in Indiana, he came over to visit and watched the show, and we talked a lot afterward. And we shared a burden on our heart, is for me especially, is that the young guys in Indiana around here, the local Republican clubs do jack squat. They just don't. There's not really anyone who cares about getting out there and reaching the youth and just hanging out with, having some guys. I even said this in a meeting, and immediately someone said, well, what about the girls? And I said, well, talk about the girls, but just let some guys come hang out. That's how you grow a group of dudes. You don't make it a school function of, all right, everyone, let's get equal numbers of guys and girls here. And now, though, on the other side of this, there are so many chapter requests to form TPUSA chapters. They're applying to your organization. I have young people that are reaching out to me asking if they can help with the show or be a part of it. People want to be involved. The best counter to what the left is doing and has been doing for decades is right now to build, to invest in other young men and women, to get them in the door, not so that you can, like you said, networking, use them for favors, but to build friendships and really motivate a huge group on the back end. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. No, I think that's absolutely right. And I'm gonna steal this line from Pastor Doug Wilson. He uses this all the time, but Reformation starts around your dinner table. It starts with the way that you talk to your wife, the way that you treat your kids, the time that you spend with them, that you're fully invested in them and what they're doing. And that extends to the people you invite over to your home and all of that. It's extremely important.
Absolutely. And again, I'm glad the conversation took this particular turn, because I think that kind of optimism is real. It's a kind of joy. And I think that it can bear dividends, and the kind of dividends that I think that, I can say with very strong surety, given our friendship, that Charlie would be all for. Nick Solheim, again, phenomenal stuff as always. American Moment. We'll share all of that information, of course, in the Chiron, and then down on the description as well. We'll have you back real soon.
Thank you very much.
All right, we've got a very short amount of time here before I have to scoot, because during the day, I am the Daily Signal's national correspondent, so I have to run off to a network TV hit in a couple of minutes. That gives me no time at all for this, but we have to talk about it a little before we dig into tomorrow. So the Federal Reserve has finally come forward to lower interest rates. They have lowered interest rates by 0.25%. That's just too small. I'm sorry, that's just far too small. Right now, currently costs about $800 more per month to buy a house with a mortgage than to keep your house with a mortgage. Homebuyer demand is rather low for this reason, and it's one of the reasons why federal rate cuts along this line are not going to re-stimulate demand. A small 0.25% cut, that ain't going to do it. I don't think so. That's a bad read of the market. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. Also, Betsy Burns, Fletch Towel, Simone Garcia all gave like really nice super chat tips this evening. Very kind of you. We don't ask you guys to do that. We try to just make this something everyone can tune into. Very, very kind of you. We really appreciate it. And while we're appreciating things, I do want to point out one final piece on the Kimmel thing. So according to Paul Swaney, he used to be at McKinsey and Amazon. So this man breathes market data and kind of analytics. He pointed out that Disney/ABC, they have not pulled Jimmy Kimmel just because of his remarks. Just because of those remarks about Charlie Kirk and people on the right side of the aisle. He says they used it to clean up a mess. It says, by comparison, Stephen Colbert, which had, they're claiming 2.42 million average viewers. I would need to see where he is pulling those numbers because that's not what Nielsen reports. So I'm going to need to see it. But anyway, 2.4 million average viewers. Maybe that's over a year. That can't be a night. I don't think so. That's not correct. But with that average viewers, maybe monthly, he's cooked. Jimmy Kimmel had perhaps 1.77 million average viewers, maybe monthly here. In any case, to Colbert's 2.42 million average viewership in a month, let's say, Kimmel's 1.77 million average viewership. He says this wasn't moral outrage, it was accounting. Yeah, pretty likely. I'd say pretty likely. But also, there really is a shift in this country right now. My own alma mater, Ball State University, just canned someone today who was truly disgusting. I feel bad about spending money on 2 master's degrees from there. I feel bad just a little less worse than perhaps I have in the past. Lastly here, in the last literally like 2 minutes I have, Megyn Kelly's crew was so kind enough to us to give us 20 free tickets. 20 free tickets to her upcoming live tour that SiriusXM is putting on. And because of that, what you need to do if you're watching the live stream, especially if you stuck around this long to do so, you should head to TonyKinnett.com, TonyKinnett.com/giveaway. There's a link in the description. If you have liked the video, if you are subscribed to the Daily Signals channel, either on YouTube or Rumble, and you've hit that little notification bell icon thing that turns on notifications. On Rumble, there's a way to turn on notifications there too. If you do that, you go to the giveaway link, you fill in the form, and when we click through your name, we see that it fills all of those little requirements. You get added to the pool of people we will randomly select. We'll spin the wheel of fortune. We'll fly Vanna White out here for crying out loud. We'll spin the wheel. We'll choose 20 people at random, and you will get a free ticket to go see Megyn Kelly live on tour. I highly recommend it. I'm going to buy a ticket. Just leveling with you right now. I think I'll go see her when she's in Texas. So that said, it's been wonderful being with you this evening. There's so much great stuff tonight. We're going to have to save some tomorrow. So be back tomorrow night. Weekends, 7 p.m. Eastern. Love being with you. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this is the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Take care.